Hello and welcome to today's web seminar, the top 5 tips for insurance agency appointment setting. This webinar is presented by StartUpSelling, and your speaker today will be me, John Scranton. I'm formerly a licensed insurance agent, was working for a top 100 agency in New York State, multi-line broker, and moved to StartUpSelling about 5 years ago. Fortunately for us and for me, since I've been here, we've more than doubled our revenue, and I manage our sales and business development efforts and also our appointment setting efforts, both for us and for our clients, which is what we'll be talking about today. So a little bit of background before we dive into the appointment setting tips. We often talk with our clients and our friends and agencies about marketing versus lead gen. And you could argue that lead gen is actually a component of marketing, and I concur with that to some extent, but we separate them into two distinct buckets to simplify things. When we're talking about marketing, we're talking about things that make your agency look good, that make your brand and image excel. Things like an attractive and current website that's mobile compliant and loaded with quality content that targets your prospects. A robust blog that's regularly posted to with interesting and educational information that your clients and prospects will be interested in. A social media presence that's professional and current, brochures or better yet, digital e-brochures that are attractive and current and professional. Meanwhile, lead generation, we usually divide into two buckets: email marketing, where you're dripping targeted content on prospects, and telemarketing, or appointment setting, as we refer to it, where you're calling in profile prospects. Now there's synergy here between these two. A great website improves the efficacy of your calls, because if you call prospect Jones, who doesn't know you, but they immediately punch in your agency name into Google, they see your website. If they're impressed, they're more open to possibly having a dialogue with you. And conversely, a great email lead gen campaign with quality targeted content will improve your brand and image, therefore your marketing. So the two work together, help each other. But today we're going to be focusing on the lead gen aspect. And as I mentioned, we usually define lead gen as either email-centric campaigns or appointment setting-centric campaigns. And those email campaigns consist of targeted content that your prospects will want to read, hopefully not directly about insurance, not save 15% or more by switching to our agency, but something that will help them overcome their business challenges, like complying with regulatory challenges or improving their experience mod factor. Those campaigns will identify interest by tracking who clicks on the campaign or opens the email or replies to that email. An email campaign, though, usually concludes with a phone call, because somebody is going to have to call these people who have clicked or opened. So the second part, the appointment setting aspect, is always the final component of a lead gen campaign. That's what we're going to be talking about today. That's why so many people were interested in today's web seminar. We have massive registration, and I can see massive attendance. It's because the appointment is what leads to the lead. That's what puts people in the sales funnel. And it's very interesting to me because appointment setting is old technology. Since phones have existed, people have called other people to ask them if they're interested in their product or service. And looking at the crowd today, there's producers, there's sales managers, there's agency executives. Many of you, me included, have done our own appointment setting or telemarketing, calling people, asking them if they would be willing to speak with us, asking them if we can help them with their business challenges or, of course, their insurance. And if we've all done it, and most of us are here because we did it to some level successfully, then why are we willing to listen to the webinar and think about more? I believe it's because we want to find a way to manage appointment setting so that while we're here talking about business challenges and how to refine and improve our business, somebody's backfilling the pipeline for us. While we're out presenting and closing, somebody is effectively setting us up with the next opportunity. So without further ado, let's talk about how we can get to those next opportunities, how we can use 5 tips that we've identified to make sure that you are successful in your appointment setting endeavors. The first tip is a quality and effective appointment setter. And we're going to spend some time on this, so buckle in. If you're going to have one takeaway from today's webinar, this is it. Tips 2 through 5 are rendered useless if you fail or struggle with tip number 1. And this is an interesting one that I get interesting feedback from agencies on. An agency actually recently told me they were going to hire an appointment setter internally. And I cautioned them and let them know what we do to find an appointment setter that we use for our clients. We review dozens of resumes, over 100 at times, to find maybe a dozen people we're comfortable interviewing. Of those dozen or so, we'll hire 3. We'll train them and pilot them, having them make calls for us on our behalf, not for our clients, for us, to find one that we want to keep long term. So interview at least a dozen, hire 3, fire 2, unfortunately, to have one that sticks. And to some agencies, that doesn't sound bad. Maybe it's something you can take on in evenings or on weekends. I'm not quite sure when, but something you could add to your already busy schedule. However, if you really find a great appointment setter, after a few weeks, they're going to want to become a producer. So there's a lot of ways to lose, very few ways to win. That's why somebody like us who has the infrastructure in place to succeed or fail fast with callers can be a great solution for agencies. Not to pitch our services, but we do have a great model. You need to find a way to refine that, expedite it, so that you get a great caller, keep them great, and then sustain that over the long term, which leads to the management of that appointment setter. Train them well, pay them well, and provide them with its incentives that are not based on the number of appointments that they set. In our case, we like to incentivize callers to get our clients so happy that they renew. If a client stays, they must have done a good job. They deserve some type of compensation. You also have to manage them on a personal level. Provide encouragement, provide motivation, provide them with a variety of projects to work on so they don't become bored or burn out. And the challenge for an insurance agency is who's going to do all this to make sure that an internal appointment setter stays happy and does a great job when you're already managing your book of business or managing producers or managing the agency as a whole. It's a very difficult challenge, which is why we wanted to spend a few minutes on it, and it's paramount to your success or failure in an appointment setting endeavor. So now that you've found a great caller, or you're working with somebody like us to help you find a great caller, tip number 2 is finding a great prospect list. There's many ways you can obtain a list. You can search on the internet to find a list vendor. You can contact associations that consist of prospects that you like, associations related to industries you want to sell into. You can contact your carriers. Hey, do you have a list of who you want to write? Those lists are usually pretty easy to get. However, in my experience, they're often very outdated and may have went to 10 other agencies that you compete against. So be careful with that. The keys is the data that you're getting sortable, and is it of a certain level of quality? When I talk about sortability, the data that you're looking at, you need to be able to break down by geography, by industry, by size, and depending on industry or how you're operating, that can be done by employee or by revenue, employee count or revenue, and title. For example, if you want to sell benefits to large groups in Southern California, you need to be able to say, I want a list of these zip codes or these counties or maybe the southern half of California. These are the industries I like: manufacturing and retail and medical, not construction, not other insurance agencies, not public companies. You need to be able to say they have to have 50 to 500 employees, and I only want the CFO, VP of HR, and maybe an HR manager. And if any of those are wrong, you lose. If people from North Carolina are on the list, you can't sell to them if they're in an industry that you don't like or can't work with, like other insurance agencies, you lose. If they only have 8 employees, you fail. So you have to be very careful that you can sort the list in a number of different ways to make absolutely certain the data fits your target profile. At the same time, that data needs to be of a certain level of quality. Most lists will have company info, and hopefully it's accurate. And if you have company information, name, address, phone, fax, etc., website, let's say you get 3 points out of 10. If you have good contact information, this is the person you want to talk to at that company. Here's their direct line and their email address. Maybe that's another 3 or 4 points, so we'll call it a 7 out of 10. And even better yet is a list that has X date and insurance carrier. And if you have all of those, that would be a 10 out of 10. That would be the best case scenario to set you up for an effective result with your appointment setting campaign. X dates are tough to get. You can choose industries or lines of coverage based on the availability of X dates and target your marketing or lead gen towards those industries or lines of coverage. For example, transportation has great data because trucking companies are required to report it to the government, and then you can procure that information. You can get carrier X date much, much more. Some states require workers' compensation filings, so you can target an account based on their workers' comp renewal date. So finding a way to get as close to that 10 out of 10 score on your prospect list will give you the best chance to succeed with your appointment setting campaign. So tip number 3, you have a great caller, you have a great list. Now, what are you going to say to these people? You may have seen the telemarketing pitches that traditional telemarketing firms or even insurance carriers, and not to beat up on them, I have many friends that work for insurance carriers. They provide they're long, it's a page-long introduction. It's several pages of objections with responses that you should use. And the bottom line is that these are too complex. They can't really be used. You're never going to have a prospect on the phone for 20 minutes or half an hour to talk to them about insurance. If you're an appointment setter, that's not your job. Your job is to get the producer on the phone, to set up a time for the producer to talk to the person for 20 or 30 minutes. So you need something that's concise and that's targeted. In my opinion, it should be a approximately 20-second introduction, a paragraph, maybe 3 sentences, something that the appointment setter can read comfortably without rushing in 20 seconds. 15 is even better. 30 is probably too long. That's the snapshot, the window of time that you get to talk to this person before they say yes, no, maybe, or maybe hang up. That should be followed with a list of compelling bullets that your caller can use or your appointment setter can use when the person says, okay, I'd like to hear more. And those should be very unique and hopefully exclusive to you bullet points. Many agencies say we've been in business for 100 years, we have the best service people, and we have all the markets. And unfortunately, that's what everybody says. So if you are a specialist or you have an exclusive program or you have some type of unique servicing capability, all of those increase your chances to take this person and put them over the edge. They've said, okay, tell me more. Now you need those compelling bullets to get them to commit. And you need to rotate those bullets through the pitch. Those bullets should be integrated into that 20-second intro that I mentioned. You try a couple. If they work, good. Try them some more, measure, and then refine. If they don't work, measure and refine. And keep cycling through. A pitch must be iterative or evolutionary, not revolutionary. It's not a one-time thing where you hit the home run and you use it forever. Over time, it'll change. The market will change. The prospects will change. You have to cycle through these bullets, create new bullets to make sure that the pitch stays compelling long term. Tip number 4, the methodology that you use for your calls. These are the details and the procedures that a caller follows while they're executing your campaign. They have a great list, an excellent pitch, but what are all the details and nuances that bring things together? They need to be able to make 20 to 25 dials of the phone per hour comfortably. If they can't do that, it's going to be too slow. You're not going to have an effective campaign. You're probably not going to have a compelling ROI. If they claim they can make 48 calls per hour, they're probably skipping something, doing something wrong, or worse, using a robo-dialer or automatic dialer, which is a big no-no for these campaigns. You also want to work with your caller and monitor them and get feedback to determine how many times should they be calling a prospect. Once, 3 times, 5 times, 10 times? At what point do they need to give up and move on to the next prospect? Now, of course, they're not calling them 10 times in a row. Maybe they're calling them once a week, but for how many weeks? Then, when they do decide to move on, what strategies do you deploy? Do you simply cast the prospect aside? Do you leave a voicemail? Do you hit 0 and ask the receptionist if there's a better way to contact this person or a different person that you could be speaking with? What works best within your industry that you're targeting, within your market, and for your caller's personal style? You have to test, you have to measure, and you have to refine. There's not a simple answer. I can't tell you that it's best for you to make 3 calls, then leave a voicemail. It's best to make 2 calls, then punch out to 0. You need to test within your industry and your market, determine what's most successful, both for the prospect and for your caller, and then implement that strategy and use it, and over time, revisit it to make sure that it continues to be evolutionary like the pitch and continues to be current instead of getting stagnant and unfortunately failing. Tip number 5. This is another very important tip. Not quite as important as number 1, but man, it's close. Lead handling. You've cultivated a lead. You've hired a person, or you've worked with us to find that right person to dial the phone. You have a beautiful list, a great pitch. You have all the procedures in place. Now, when this little sapling is delivered to your producer, let's make sure that they have the structure in place to fertilize it, water it, let it grow. They're very busy. They're distracted by their $600,000 book they're managing, or whatever the case may be. We can't let this little sapling, this bud, die. So what do? A lead comes in. Let's say that I am your project manager and I send you a lead. Joe would like to talk to you Tuesday at 10 a.m. Producer Mike, who's working on this project, should send Joe an Outlook calendar invitation immediately, as soon as he sees it in his email. If he's often on the road, he should have his CSR send one for him on his behalf, or somebody who's always in the office. If the appointment is a day or 2 out, great. If it's any longer than that, he needs to find some point in time, maybe halfway between the day the appointment is set and the day the appointment is to occur, to send collateral, send a company overview, send a case study. If the appointment's more than 4 or 5 days out, he should also add a last step reminding the person of that appointment to make sure that they show up. He doesn't want to drive there or get prepared to call them only to find out that they got distracted and missed the boat. Find a lead handling process that's effective, again, for your producer and for the prospects in your industry, to make sure that when you get compelling information, and here's an example, you capitalize on it and make the best of your opportunity. I thought I'd show you a sample lead alert to make sure everybody knew what we were talking about. Here's a genericized transportation lead alert. Many of you know we do a lot with transportation-centric agencies. This is what a lead alert to us should look like. Complete company information, complete contact information so you know who you're talking to, some details about the account. Here's a 43 truck account with 30 company drivers and 10 owner-operators. They handle general freight up to 1,000 miles. They're with the Northland program and they renew 1-1. Common scenario. However, uncommon and important are the notes. They're not happy with the service and responsiveness of their current broker relationship. So when you prepare for this appointment, you know if you focus your dialogue on service, on quick turnaround, on a lot of attentiveness, you have a great chance to make an impression. So, a great appointment setter, a great list, a targeted and concise pitch with the right methodology and lead handling process will create opportunities like this for you to succeed with insurance agency appointment setting. If you have any questions or if you would like more information, please contact me. My information is on the screen. We thank you all for attending today. This web seminar is now ending. We hope you have a great day.